Recording has started.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Kyra and I'm here to welcome you to yet another Vivi Rocks webinar. This is a Vivi Rocks webinar series. It's one of a number of different webinars that we're doing, and we're kind of here to make sure that we can bring fitness, health and wellness into mainstream so that you can understand, makes it a little bit easier for you to understand and implement into the busy lives that we lead. We're the place you'll come to when you're looking for some practical solutions to some of the biggest problems that you have, and we tell you how you can make significant changes without breaking the bank. Vivi Rocks is on a mission to bring amazing speakers around the table to discuss everything that you might want to know about pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause and beyond. And today we are discussing EFT tapping. It's about time for us to understand what EFT is, how to do it, and how to answer a big question that I have for my audience. Can EFT help women with specific health and wellness problems? We're going to discuss the ins and outs of EFT, the science behind it, and how to apply EFT to two distinct clients. A woman going through menopause who is suffering from hot flushes, stress, anxiety and struggling in her workplace. The second client we're going to look at is a new mum who is returning back to the workplace out of the home, is suffering from postpartum overwhelm, which might combine stress, anxiety and possibly burnout. A little about me. My name is Michelle Kyra. I'm a certified master personal trainer. I'm a Nordic walking instructor, a Pilates instructor, and I'm the founder of Vivi Rocks. I originally spent my early career in the corporate banking world. I retrained as a fitness professional in late 2009, and since 2010 I've been running different fitness companies all over the world. I have got a keen interest in female health and wellness, and I've been looking after my own health and wellness for probably the last 25-30 years. I have decided that Vivi Rocks is a place that is badly needed in the industry, because at the moment we are looking at fitness in general, and I actually want to hone it down a little bit and help specific people. So Vivi at the moment is looking at the mum space, and we're also looking at the menopause space. Something that's really important to me is to bring science-backed data, science-backed content, things that we know are actually proven to work. Today's session is really exciting for me because I am an EFT newbie. I know not very much about it, but I've been in a couple of trial sessions. So I am probably like you. I'm going to be thinking about a lot of different questions, and I'm going to be asking as we go along a lot of different things that might be really quite silly and simple, but probably what you're thinking too. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce my guest tonight because she is a true expert in EFT. Janine, I want to hand this over to you, and I'd really like you to introduce yourself and take a little bit of time to tell us about the professional background that you have, so that when I talk about science-backed, I know that we're on the right path and I've got the right person here. So Janine, welcome to the session.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So yeah, I'll just explain a little bit about my background first of all, and then go into kind of EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping, and what the hell that is if anyone's not heard of it, because I was very skeptical when I first came across it many years ago. So I totally get anyone who feels skeptical where they're at. So my name's Janine Mitchell. I'm the founder of a company called Change for Success, which I set up back in 2014 after my own struggles with my own mental health and my own well-being. So Change for Success, I'm based in Manchester in the UK, but I've worked with clients all across the world, like yourself. And I basically specialise in helping people improve resilience, improve their lifestyle, lower stress. And I work with private clients in Manchester and across the world, and I work with corporate clients as well. With my private clients, I work with anyone who suffers things like stress, anxiety, depression, confidence. We really work with their mindset to help them get to a good place, and we work in a very, very quick space of time. So I'm an EFT, NLP and hypnotherapist. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping. I'll get into that in a moment. And as I say, I really struggled many years ago because my background's in psychology. I've been in the mental health field for about 18 years now. And I actually worked with high risk offenders for many years. I worked with men in prisons across the UK, and men who suffered from all kinds of personality disorder, mental health, their own issues, but also men who were very violent. You name it, I work with them. I work with, I work with sex offenders, lifers, drug dealers, violent offenders, men who committed murder, all kinds. So I did that for many, many years. But as I say, I suffered my own kind of issues. Really, I got involved in a relationship. That relationship became very abusive, and I've talked about this a lot over the years because I was working with men who'd committed abuse against their partners, and I got involved in one of those kind of relationships. My dad had not long passed away, so I was struggling myself. So I've talked about this openly because I kind of think if I couldn't spot those signs being in that profession, like how could your average Joe or Joe on blogs kind of, spot that? So I've talked about this a lot across the UK over the last few years. And I really struggled. My confidence was on the floor. I suffered burnout. I was managing really, really high caseloads of men, as I say, in prison, various prisons around the UK. And I was also trying to deal with this relationship at home as well. So it was a real struggle. So I finally managed to leave that marriage after several attempts, and I went and got help myself, which I didn't really want to do, to be honest. I was a strong, independent female. I was like, I can sort my own stuff out. Why do I need to go and see some guy to sort out my own problems? But this man came highly recommended. He was the best in Liverpool. This is where I was working at the time. So I went along to see him, and it might sound a bit cliche, but what he taught me just changed my life. And then I went on to retrain, and then that's when Change for Success, my company was born effectively. So as I say, my background was in psychology, but I retrained as a hypnotherapist, NLP, neuro linguistic programming practitioner, and an emotional freedom technique practitioner. And very early on in those sessions, I was taught tapping, and I was so skeptical. I was like, this is weird. Like, how does it? I'll talk about what it is in a moment. I was like, this is weird. Like, how is this going to help? Like, very, very strange. But I started noticing change in my life, and quite dramatically, actually, quite quickly. So I went then, as I say, on my own journey. I trained there, and even on my first training course into that, I was very skeptical. But how does this even work? But I then went on to, as I say, do a master's degree in clinical psychology, and I conducted some research which got published in, I've got a copy here actually, in the Energy Psychology Journal, peer-reviewed journal, and that was all looking into exploring. I conducted a semi-structured interview across many practitioners around the world, and we asked those practitioners, some of these who've been in the field for 20, 30 years, why is EFT, why is tapping, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, why is this not yet considered mainstream in the UK? It's actually considered mainstream in places like Australia. It's pretty much mainstream there. Why? Because of the clinical research that they're doing. And there's a lady called Dr. Peter Stapleton who spearheads a lot of the clinical research and a lot of the academia over there in Bond University. And there's loads of research conducted around the world, which I'll go to in a bit. But first of all, what are we talking about? What is emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as tapping?
I think just to, before we do the EFT, what is it? I'm just going to set the scene to make it crystal clear that we have these two criteria that we're going to look at tonight.
Yeah.
Because these two personas, if you like, exactly what you've just described. They are in positions where they could be highly stressed, very anxious, very overwhelmed, and while you were talking about, men in prison, when we're talking about human beings here, but when we're talking about the two demographics and the two categories that I'm looking at, the new mum returning back into the workplace is going to be one of our categories. Let's just imagine that she has got a 6-month-old baby. She is probably still breastfeeding, let's say. She's got a job outside of her home, so she doesn't work from home. She has to commute some distance to a city to her office. Her office is fairly flexible if she needed an emergency to come out. She's high managerial position. That's the kind of mum that we're going to look at. And the
Yeah.
menopause woman, we're going to look at somebody who is mid 40s, late 40s, and she is suffering from hot flushes. And the reason I'm making this point really clear is I want to see, I read a tweet from Dr. Jen Gunter, and she was referring to mindfulness and repeating a mantra as she was going through a hot flush. And a hot flush, just for those who don't know, your body takes over. You have no option in that. You can't stop a flush. For me, I was mapping this across her comment to, I wonder if EFT could work. Okay, so these are our two, just to set the scene for anybody watching this, these are the two that we're going to do. And please, tell us now, what is EFT? Where did it originate from? And what is it most commonly used for? That would be kind of my initial questions for you.
Yeah, we'll go into that in a moment. But when I work with private clients, we have so much in common with what we've just talked about. So as you say, you go into this situation, you go into a hot flush, and I can't control this hot flush. We can control how we manage our physiological and emotional response to that. So with a hot flush comes the anxiety and the stress and the overwhelm. You're saying about going back into work. There's all these factors that affect us, the overwhelm, the anxiety, the burnout, all this. So I'll touch on that when we go into the in-depth discussion around tapping and what it is and where it comes from. But one thing that I find with every single, if we're talking about private clients here for a moment, every single client that I work with, they sit down, whether it's on the chair opposite me in my office is in the city centre of Manchester, or whether it's here on because I see a lot of clients on Zoom normally. So clients come to see me for one thing, that's something they want to, not one thing, there's always one thing they have in common, they want to change something. So there might be real high level anxiety or stress or panic attacks or overwhelm or burnout or clients, whatever they could, every single client has the same thing in common. There's something they want to change. They want to feel good. They want to feel happy. They want to feel calm. They want to feel in control. They want to feel successful again. They want to feel, and I remember going to a networking group when I first started the business years ago, and I remember seeing a lady who she was a very, very successful architect, and she'd been off, she'd had a baby, she'd been not out of work, but she'd not been physically in work for 4 years. Coming back, she said, I feel like I've got no confidence. It's like almost forgetting, how do I work, So I guess the point I'm trying to make is just going back to that. It's always something that a client kind of wants to change, and they want to get back to a space of feeling whatever that is. And we always work towards that goal, a bit like obviously what you do. It's getting a client or a group of clients to feel good about themselves in whatever way. And there's a common goal, if that makes sense, a common theme. Well, yeah, it's good just to clarify that. Okay, so just go back. I'll just go back to the basic roots of this, really. So emotional freedom technique, what is it? The best way I describe it is like acupuncture without the needles. So it's a modern psychological technique combined with an ancient Chinese acupressure therapy. So what we're actually doing, we're actually physically tapping on certain meridian points around the face and upper body while talking through whatever the problem or the issue is. So that's kind of just break it down in brief. It was actually, the innovator was someone called Gary Craig, and he this came out of something called thought field therapy, which was innovated by someone called Roger Callahan, and he was a psychologist. Gary Craig came along, and now this is something that's been developed by thousands and thousands of years by the Chinese, and it's so incredible what they did over these thousands of years. But what Gary Craig did in the late 80s, he found that there were various points around the face and upper body which we can actually physically tap on. So if you think of acupuncture but without needles, so if you think of acupuncture, there's certain needles that go into certain points. So with this technique, you don't need to use needles, which is great. I've never had acupuncture, but I believe it gets you to a nice space. It helps just clear some old blockages and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of science behind this as well, but I'll just talk about it in brief before we go into obviously these specifics that we're talking about today. So there's a few things that it does. When we actually start tapping on these what are called meridian points, these points are all connected to organs within the body. This is what the science kind of shows us. So as you said there, when you go into a state of anxiety or overwhelm or a hot flush, this is a physiological feeling. Okay, when we go into a state of anxiety, we can feel that somewhere within our body. When we feel overwhelmed, we can feel that. We feel that hot flush, it's kind of come out, and it's that physiological response. So what we want to do with tapping is to help us feel more in control, but also lower those feelings of anxiety, stress, overwhelm. How do we do that? So what the science shows us, there's probably 10, 20 years ago, the science wasn't as good. The science is improving year on, year out, and it's phenomenal what's coming out now in terms of the scientific research. As I say, Dr. Peter Stapleton, what she's doing over there at Bond University in Australia is amazing. There's someone called Dr. Dawson Church who's conducted a lot of research all around the world. And I'll just talk about kind of what this does on the scientific basis just before we go into a bit more detail. What the science shows us, when we start tapping on these meridian points, it actually lowers the stress hormone. Now, the stress hormone is cortisol. There's a physiological change. There's loads of research, but I'll just talk about a couple of different scientific studies just to put some kind of, create some understanding around this. So when we start tapping on these points, which I'll go to it shortly, what they actually found with this research is cortisol lowers. So how they did this was they had a group of participants who had an hour's kind of standard talking therapy. They were the control group. And then they had another group of, this is Dr. Dawson and his team. And then they had another group of participants that had kind of standard talking, but with the EFT, the tapping on top. And what they found with the two groups, they found they wanted to measure the stress response. They wanted to measure the cortisol. So what they did with both groups, they took a saliva sample before and after they had these two sessions, the control group and the group that had the EFT, the tapping therapy. And what they found was when they measured cortisol via these saliva samples before and after. What they actually found afterwards in the EFT group, there was a significant reduction in the level of cortisol. So the significant reduction in stress. That's the first thing that it does. When we start tapping on these meridian points, it actually lowers cortisol. It works with the stress response in the brain. So it actually sends it, when we go into any of these stressful situations that we've just been talking about today, we go into what's called fight or flight. And part of the brain kind of kicks in, part of the brain called the amygdala that controls us fight or flight. We go into this stress response, and we go into a lot of it automatically without realizing. So what EFT tapping does, it actually sends a calming signal to the brain. It sends a calming signal to the amygdala. And this is what I like about it. When clients come to see me, they work with me as a practitioner, we get right into the root cause of whatever the issue is. So we work on the basics of whatever the presenting issue, but we get right to the root. But what I actually love about it as well, when I work with clients, clients can actually go and use this for themselves as a self-help tool, which is what I really like about it. So we can start kind of learning how to tap on these points and start using this for ourselves, which is why this is perfect for some of these, clients that we've all, possible people that we've just been talking about today. So, for example, if I'm working with, just think of a couple of clients at the moment, a client who's been suffering with severe anxiety. I'll work with clients who have not been able to leave the house because anxiety is that bad. They're having multiple panic attacks a day. So if that client's working with me, we'll work in depth in session to help them lower anxiety, help them work on that anxiety. But when they're not with me, if I'm not with them 24/7, I'll have a client who can feel themselves going into a panic attack. And these panic attacks are severe. I'm talking about a client that's to lock themselves in a bathroom for an hour. This is how severe these panic attacks. Closing the door because the dog's just gone out. These are how severe these panic attacks are. And when that particular client can feel that coming on, they'll just kind of they'll use these exercises I've given them. They'll just kind of start tapping on the points, and they won't go into that panic because they're sending that calming signal. And the more they do this particular client I'm thinking about, like she can't remember the last time she had a panic attack because we're doing the deep work in session, but she's also been able to use these techniques. So that's what I like about it. So there's a couple of things that it does. There's loads and loads of other stuff that it does do, but it actually it works with the subconscious part of the brain. So it's starting to rewire those old patterns, those old behaviors, those ways of being. So at a really deep-rooted level, it actually reprograms old ways of being, old patterns, and as I said before, just kind of starts to send that calming signal. So it actually rewires the brain, and there's a lot of science behind this as well. So
Okay.
it works on all different areas. It works for pain, it works with anxiety, it works with stress, it actually works on food cravings. It helps, improve kind of confidence. Why does it work on all these different areas so well? Because people are probably thinking, hang on a minute, how can this weird tapping thing work on all these different areas? Because it goes back to whatever that root is, and we start, as I say, start changing those odds. Because let's take confidence, for example, just as an example. We're not born saying I'm not confident. We're born like a clean slate. Yeah, we're born kicking and screaming, coming out of the womb. We're not bothered. We just want some food and we want some love and we want those. But actually, over the years, we kind of might learn, oh, I don't feel very confident in a social situation, or I don't feel confident of public speaking. That more people are scared of public speaking than deaf, statistically speaking. But we're not born thinking I'm scared of speaking in a crowd. We pick that up somewhere along the way. So if we learn something, we can unlearn it. And that's what tapping very powerfully does.
In terms of the action of tapping, and it's not for me to say to you just now, oh, let's do let's try it out. More just talk to me about the points, because you've mentioned it a couple of times and touched your face.
Yeah.
So what points are we going for? What's number one? What's number two? What's what are we doing when we do that? Can you talk me through the like ones here, 4 taps here, 7 taps? I'm somebody who likes root structure. So for me, I would be probably going, okay, I'm doing this for the count of 4. I'd be probably counting the numbers or whatever. Show me a little demo of how you're going around the upper body. What are you tapping?
Yeah, we'll go through the actual points in a moment. And just for the viewers, anyone that's watching this webinar, I've sent you a document with the actual tapping points on. So if anyone needs to just see those tapping points, then we've got that document there, which I'm obviously going to send you. That's fine. Because
Excellent.
the most common question I get asked is, what are the points and where do I tap and what do I say? Those are the most common question that people ask. I've got a YouTube channel. We can have the link to that as well. I've got about 70 or 80 tapping videos on there. I've got tapping for a good day, tapping for anxiety, tapping to help sleep, tapping for stress, tapping to help improve confidence.
Manifestation. Can you manifest and tap?
Yeah, there's all kinds on there, honestly. So there's a link to that. So if anyone's unsure what to say and where to tap, there's loads of videos on there. They're all around 5 minutes long. But we will go through the points just so everyone's got an idea of where the points are. As I said before, each point is connected to an organ within the body. So when we think, let's talk about manifestation, for example, when we think a thought, I'm not going to achieve that, oh God, I'm not going to get that, whatever it is, that feels quite negative. Then we feel a feeling in the body and we feel quite sad or upset. And then we feel that feeling, then we feel another thought. So it's going round and round and round and round. It's almost like a dog chasing its tail, yeah? So there's a thought in the head and a feeling in the body. So it's like a motorway, and then it gets blocked. And what tapping does, it unblocks that. So rather than going round and round and round and round, we unblock that kind of negative cycle, if you like, because we're having around 60,000 thoughts a day, and most of those are negative. So we're going into that same old cycle over and over and over. So we have the thought in the mind and then the feeling in the body. So what tapping does is rather than kind of going through this same old loop, it'll start to disrupt that pattern. It'll start to, it's an energy therapy basically, but we're all everything is kind of made of energy. You know, if you look at quantum physics, I won't go into all that, but so we're starting to kind of break those old patterns, because the thing is going round and round and round and round and round. And then a client I was working with not so long ago, for example, with a phobia, unless they do the work, that phobia is just going to stay. But we do the work to clear those kind of connections. So okay, so each point they're all connected to organs within the body, because the thought is in the head and the feeling is in the body. So that's how that interrupts. So the first point we actually tap on is actually the side of the hand. So if we're right-handed, take a right hand and we'll just start, or if you're left-handed, that's fine, it's the other way. Right-handed, we'll just tap on the side of the left hand there. That's where we start, we kind of set the thing up. So just 2 or 3 fingers, just lightly, just on the side of the hand. And I always kind of say to clients, there's no right or wrong way to tap. I would always, if you're feeling any kind of anxiety coming up or anything that's a hot flush, whatever it is, if you're kind of in the middle of work and you think, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like a bit rubbish right now, but there's people around me. No one's going to see if you're just doing that under your desk.
Exactly.
No
Yes.
one's going to see if you just 2 or 3 fingers. You just kind of a couple of deep breaths. I always say if the worst comes to the worst, no one cares if you just pop into the toilet for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just pop into the toilet. Just go somewhere. If you don't want to walk around the road looking stupid, that's fine. Go into the toilet for 5 minutes. Go somewhere. When I actually just go, I will go into those in a moment. Just let me. This is really interesting. I just wanted to touch on this just for a moment.
Yeah.
Talking about this abusive marriage that I suffered, and it did take me several attempts to leave this relationship. Finally left. Wasn't a good play. I was I looked about 10 years older than I do now. I've never had any Botox. That was about 12 years ago. I was in a bad place. Anyway, managed to leave that relationship. A year later, when I'd not set eyes on my ex-husband for a year, he owed me a load of money basically, so I had to take him to court. A year later, in court, I never set eyes on the guy for a year. We're in a tiny little holding room. The last thing I wanted to do really was, so I was obviously a lot of anxiety come up. I said to my friend, I'm just going to pop into the toilet. It'll be 5 minutes. Just did some tapping on my own for 5 minutes around. I'll tell you now, I walked back into that courtroom about a foot taller. My confidence, the anxiety just went, and I smashed that day. All the money, he pretty much crumbled. He started crying nearly, and all the money came back within, sorted it within a few weeks. So that was fine. But that just me just going into the toilet, just doing a bit of tapping on confidence, just sorted me out. So yeah, we can tap on anything we want. So the first point we tap on is just kind of the side of the hand.
Okay.
That's where we kind of set the thing up, what we call the setup point. Okay. And then the next point is just kind of in between the eyebrows, just kind of a couple of fingers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next point. The way the body works, both sides of the body are exactly the same, so we can tap on one side, both sides, whatever works for you. But the next point is just the side of the eye, just a couple of fingers. Okay. That's good. I'm just a bit full of cold. I've been a bit bummed up last couple of days, as you know. So sorry, I'm a bit sniffly. I'm not usually like this. The next point is just below the eyes.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. And then the next point is just below the nose.
Mm-hmm.
The next point is just, that's great that other people are trying. Thank you. Just anyone who's watching, just tap along with us. And we're probably gonna have a little go today as well, because you want to see what it feels like, right? No point talking about not doing it. We may as well have a go. And then the next point, if you just feel kind of where your actual collarbone is, just actually on the, now I kind of like this point again. If I'm in a traffic jam and I'm like, I can be there really stressed out, I can just go, you know what, I'm just going to do a bit of tap, hold the wheel, obviously, a bit of tapping for a minute, like. So I really like that point, just kind of on the actual collarbone. Okay. The next point just feels a bit weird, but just go with it. 2 or 3 fingers down around the kind of bra strap area. That's the second to last point. That's good. And then the last tapping point is just on the top of the head. So that is effectively a round of tapping. Now, as I said before, the most common question I get
after that. Sorry to interrupt.
I'll talk about. I'll go to that in a moment. Yeah. So the most common question I get asked is, as I say, where do I tap? How long do I tap? What do I say? There's no right or wrong. It's good to just go through the sequence. You could even just tap on the points and not say anything at all, or just find. I always say to people, have a play around with it.
Yeah. Okay.
If anything kind of comes up, a bit of anxiety, just be gently kind of tapping through the points. That's the first point to start at. Check out my YouTube channel, but just just tap around the points. Just get used to the points. Have a play around.
Yeah.
I had a client the other day. Oh, I really like that point. Great. Just be tapping there, or there's no right or wrong, but that sequence is a tapping sequence, if you like.
Perfect.
So that's where we set the thing up. Now when I work in session, I go round and round. We do the thing. We get right into the thing, go round and round on that over and over, for depending on where we need to get to. But we can, if you wanted to have a go today, I'd be happy to do that, just so we can see how this feels.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of, for me, I love the idea, especially as a mum, I love the idea of therapy, speaking therapy, going to see a therapist, speaking to someone, having a chat. But I never do it, and I'm reluctant to do it because I feel like I would open maybe a can of worms, and after 1 hour I'd leave and I'd be like, oh, I didn't feel I resolved something. EFT tapping to me seems like it's the here and now, it's action based, which really appeals to me because as a busy mum, I want action. I want something that's going to work here and now. I don't have 6 months to then start getting it. So for
Yeah.
EFT, how long would one need to be practicing EFT for it to be effective? And how would one measure that improvement change? So how would I know that there's an improvement and change? Clearly, I can say, well, 6 months ago, that anxiety, that would have pushed me over the edge. I would have been an absolute nightmare if that same scenario happened. But
Yeah.
quite a lot of things could have happened in that 6 months, including talking therapy, including maybe fitness and exercise, including joining a mother's group or a menopause group or somebody that you're sharing your woes with.
Yeah.
So how do we know for the EFT? I'm not questioning the effectiveness. What I'm trying to say is, from you as a practitioner, how long would you say to a brand new client, look, you're going to probably need to be practicing this for X amount of time for it to become effective, and here's how we're going to measure that improvement or change. How is it you measure these two things?
Okay. Yeah, cool. Good question. Well, everyone's different. What I would say, I would kind of debunk what your thoughts are as well on talking therapy. So there's a few things here. First of all, we're not going to just change overnight, because remember, we're thinking around 60,000 thoughts a day, and this stuff's been around for a long time. And there is a place for talking therapy. I think the way I work, it's a lot. It's kind of working at a much more practical level, because talking therapies can go on for months and months and years.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I caught with a friend the other week, and she a sister's friend or something. She's been going to talking therapists for years. I'm sorry, but that for me is unprofessional, because we want to try and get the work done.
In that, I want to get
Do you
more.
know what I
More
mean?
of a
It's like,
solution. Yeah.
so there's a place for talking therapy, but the only thing with no disrespect to talking therapists, it's better than nothing. But you're just kind of regurgitating and going over all the old stuff that might have happened. If we've had a trauma, if we've been highly traumatized 10 years ago, like, it's horrible, like, I'm sorry, but that trauma has gone. It's not happening now. It happened 10 years ago. No disrespect to that. But the thing I like with emotional freedom technique, like when I first heard this technique, I thought to me, it sounds woo-woo. Emotional freedom, what's all that about? But actually, what the hell's that? Emotional freedom, that sounds woo-woo. Oh, I don't like woo-woo. Because I'm a scientific kind of psychology type of gal. I don't like any of that. I'm like, what is this? But actually, when you break it down, emotional freedom, we're freeing ourselves from the emotions of our past.
Yeah.
So we're working very much in the here and the now. If we've experienced some kind of traumatic event, we've all experienced, this is why this technique is so powerful for PTSD. Because we might have experienced some kind of trauma. If we're a war veteran, we've experienced the most horrific trauma 20 years ago, but we're still experiencing the symptoms of PTSD, even though that trauma happened 20 years ago. Why? Because we're still having nightmares, we're still having anxiety, depression, emotion, because we've not released that emotional attachment of what happened from those events years ago. So we do very much work in the here and now, but we help let go of emotional attachment.
Yeah.
So in terms of how do we know, how do we measure it? I always say to clients, look, you know yourself better than anyone. Look, Michelle, you know yourself well. If we started working together, you know how you feel, and you know yourself better than I know you. But what I would also say to people is, while clients see a big shift sometimes in one session, two session, I would always say commit to doing some work with this. So commit to working with a therapist or a practitioner like myself. Don't just kind of say, oh, I've just done that for 5 minutes, not work, thanks.
Yeah.
I've tried meditation for 5 minutes, that's not working. We need to commit some time to this. But what I do see, I see clients who, one client I can think of. Sorry, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
No. One client, I can think of. They came to me in the early 60s with clinical depression. They'd suffered this from the age of 17. We started working together. Within a space of a few weeks, they noticed a huge change. So normally, I say to clients, you know yourself better than anyone. You will start to see the change, and that's kind of how we measure it. But we'll look at how we measure it physically within the session. We'll do that in a moment, because we'll have a little practice. But we do start to see. I always kind of say to clients, if we do the work together in session, and you do what you can outside of the session, you will start to see noticeable change. If we do the work in session and then just kind of go off and don't, it's about really kind of I guess, how the client can notice themselves and what change they see themselves. But we do see great change. I mean, I've worked with clients recently who've had severe anxiety, panic attacks, trauma in 3 to 4 months. That's just kind of gone. So we can see huge shift with a lot of clients, but I'd say anywhere between 3 to 6 months. But some clients see a huge shift within 2 to 3 sessions, you know. So it can be a lot quicker than just kind of your bog standard talking therapy. So how does that make you feel? Well, that's fine, but is it really going to get to the root of the problem? It might do in a few months or a year or 2 years, but this is why I really like this tool, because it's very practical. It's proven. There's a lot of science behind it. Do you know what I mean? So we're getting to the root at a much quicker rate. That's why I do like this, along with hypnotherapy and NLP, because we're working with the power of the subconscious mind. That's why I'm not personally a huge fan of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because you're not really getting under the hood of the car. You know, I used CBT for years in my old job. We were kind of trained. A lot of CBT is watered down now as well. You know, you might go to your GP. They might then refer you on to some kind of basic CBT. The waiting list is going to be very long. You might jump on 5-6 sessions. It's not really getting to the root of the issue. That's the only thing for me. That's just my personal view. Like, you know, some people might have really, really positive experiences with CBT. I'm very critical because of what I did in my research. To get to clinical psychology level, you do, and EFT is criticised a lot. There's a lot of criticism. You know, every therapy will have critical elements to it, because that's what psychology is, isn't it? You know.
Exactly that. What I would ask about the EFT part and moving on from, you know, how would we know it's effective? I'm really glad that you said that piece about you would do this with a practitioner, because that was one of my top questions. Is this something that you could learn by yourself and kick off and on you go? And it sounds like actually no, that's probably not the case. You could probably learn the technique, like I would maybe show you the technique of a squat and show you the technique of, I don't know, a deadlift, but you would need to maybe have someone spotting you and watching you and helping you that whole entire time. So the next time you go to the gym, you've got somebody spotting you. I would imagine that would be the same as EFT is what you're talking about. So in terms of a practitioner point of view, in your experience, what is the length of time of a program? Would you be likely to see somebody like a new mom who's suffering PPD, postpartum depression? Would you be wanting to see somebody like somebody going through menopause? Would you want to see them and say to them, okay, this is going to be at least a 6-month program, or is it shortened? Is it something like 10 weeks? What's your experience in that?
Yeah, it really depends. I would say 6 months is the maximum. 3 to 6 months. Yeah, definitely. And what I usually see with clients, we'll see clients on a weekly basis. They'll come in on a weekly basis, and then we might reduce. Because as I said, it's just about working with the client on where they're up to. So they might come on a weekly basis for the first 2 to 3 months, and then we reduce that to fortnightly, just seeing where the client is up to effectively. So we review it on a month-by-month basis, because I think, you know, with what I've seen with the hundreds of clients I've worked over the years, we usually start to see a shift within the first couple of weeks. Good. But then the massive, you know, the massive change can happen, anywhere between 3 to 6 months usually. And then this is what I love about it, because these are the tools and techniques that client has got. Then they've got, like you say, if you're working with someone, if you're a personal trainer, you're working, you know, you're there, you're saying, right, Janine, you're going to do this week, and you're keeping me accountable. If you say to me, right, I'm going off traveling for 3 months, I hope you're all right at the gym, and then you come back and I say, oh, I only went a couple of times, because you're not kind of keeping me accountable, are you? Yeah. But if I've been working with you week after week after week, and you've taught me all these great skills at the gym, then I can start to, because if I just rock up at the gym on my own tomorrow, I don't really know what I'm doing. But you're there giving me all these techniques, and then I'm working with you solidly for 6 months, and then it becomes almost a habit, doesn't it? And then I can go off and do my own routine because you've taught me. So that's kind of what it does. But what I do like with a practitioner, we get right to the deep-rooted issue, and we clear that from a nice, relaxed pace. You can go away and use it on your own without a practitioner, but you would work on what I call the global issue. You'd work on around 10 to 20%. You'd work on, the global, but not get to the deeper root. And I'm there to hold your hand and really keep you accountable, because, as you rightly say, if you're this new mum, or you're feeling in this space, or you can't really do it on your own. It's about someone to be there, holding your hand to guide you through and to work with you, like you do with your. So many
Yeah,
people get personal trainers, which is great because they want to work. They want someone to work with them and hold the hand and
yeah.
really keep them accountable. And it's the same kind of thing, but we're working with a deeper issue at a nice, relaxed pace. And we have a bit of fun with it as well. It's not all doom and gloom. We have.
Yeah, no, it
One
sounds
client I
amazing.
worked with, he did amazing. He wrote me an amazing test. It's on my testimonials, and he just said, sessions. We used to have a laughing sessions. I mean, we worked on some real deep stuff with him, and he did amazing. Like, he knocked it out of the park,
Yeah,
and he was at a place where his business was. He was struggling with his business and all everything else. We worked together 5, 6 months down the line. Like, he's smashing it, and
yeah.
that's one thing he said. He said, "Don't need to be doom and gloom. We had fun with the sessions, and we have a
Fun with
laugh."
it. Yeah.
Well, the stuff that he did with the sessions it just blew me away. That was all. That was pretty much 9 out of 10. What we did was tapping. We did some other bits, but mainly tapping with him and a lot of other stuff I bring to the session. But yeah, really, really powerful stuff. Really cool.
If if we are talking about, let's look specifically at the menopause women. I want to look at her specifically, and I want to think about her. Let's say she's 49. Okay, so we know for a fact she is in the menopause zone. She's maybe still getting her menstrual cycle, so she's not done one full year without a menstrual cycle, which is the medical term for saying that you've hit the menopause bit. So that technically is perimenopause that she's in. She does suffer from hot flushes. Now, there's a lot of brain aging or brain changes that are happening during peri. So to kind of take a step back from that just slightly, when we're going through that hot flush, you talked about that earlier about being the body is making a physiological change. It's something's happening. In addition to that, let's assume that she is in a high performing team. She is in the midst of a high performing senior manager. She's maybe in a meeting. There's maybe 10 people around the table. She's got spreadsheets out. She's got a presentation up. She's just about to present. She's doing quite a lot of stuff. That hot flush kicks in. Her confidence is plummeting. She's starting to get absolutely soaking with sweat. She's getting nervous, anxious. Palms are sweating. What are you helping her with? You've seen her for maybe 6 weeks, 7 weeks at this point. What is she clicking into at that moment, that split second? What is she saying? Right, Janine told me to do what?
Well, we would have already, if we worked together for 6 weeks, she probably wouldn't be at that stage by then.
Okay.
We'd probably be at that stage in maybe week 1 or 2 because we've already done quite a bit of the work. I wouldn't be expecting to be at that state by 6 weeks because we've done a lot of work by then, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
probably maybe week 1 or 2 that happens, for example.
Okay.
So does that make sense? Because I think with
Definitely.
the work we do during that time, I wouldn't be expecting, say, Debbie. I wouldn't be expecting Debbie to get everything feels that bad after 6 weeks because we've already done quite a lot of the work. So she might feel like that in week 1 or 2. So by that point, she's been introduced to tapping and how this works and understanding the physiological sensations within her body and how that affects her. And then, as you say, all of a sudden going into this presentation, I would suggest if we're working closely together anyway, if we're working together every Monday morning, for example, and then we finish the session, actually I've got a presentation this week, I just know I'm going to go into stress. Right, we do some work on that in the session before she gets to the presentation. Does that make sense? So I'd be getting her to do the work before she even gets into the presentation. So we do some practice around that in the session. A bit like we were saying about, if you're working with someone who wants to get into a wedding dress in 6 weeks, or you'd be working with them to get to that point, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean? So we'd be doing the prep in the session, then I'd be telling her exactly what to do before she even gets to that presentation. She'd be going away, I'd be giving her tools and techniques to use before she gets to that. So when she's in the presentation, she might have done some tapping before or something like that. So yeah, a bit of the stuff might come up, but it's not going to come up as bad, and she feels more confident. Like I was saying, when I was running to the toilets before that courtroom, I was like, oh my God, I feel so anxious. I was sweating. It's different things, but I still felt the same as what Debbie would feel within that thing. So we teach her all the techniques to use.
And she's pulling back on, this is what Janine and I talked about already. I know I can do this.
Exactly. But not just that, we get a deeper into it. She'd be doing some work before that presentation, whether it's tapping, whether it's some other stuff that we learn. and then she'd be using that, and she'd go into the thing. She, like I say, she might be sat under the desk doing that bit below the desk and just be doing some breathing exercise that I'm teaching her. And once she gets into that presentation, she smashes it, comes in session on Monday and says, you know what, I did all right on Friday. I went, told you would, and then we worked through the next stage. So does that make sense? So that's how we generally do that.
And in that scenario, and you've answered a question that I was going to ask, it's okay to just do one zone, one tap area. You don't, I mean, obviously it'd be better to go around the technique.
Everyone's different. Everyone's different. If she was in a real state of high stress, say she had that presentation at 11 o'clock on the Friday, I'd be telling her what to do from the minute she got up that morning.
Okay, yeah.
I'd be sending her things for her to be doing the night before, that morning. If it was something that wasn't too bad, then fine. But if this is real high stress, like it sounds like it is from our lady Debbie that we've called up, don't know why, Debbie, love you, Debbie.
We love her.
If she was in that state, I'd be teaching all these things to do on the run up to it, and there were all kinds of different things that we could do, and then prior to that, I'd probably just tell her just to do some practice before the actual thing. Maybe in the toilet if she's in work, that's fine.
Yeah.
But there'd be a load of things we'd be teaching her before the actual event, yeah.
So in that same meeting, believe it or not, we have our new mum. She works in the same office, let's just say, just to keep it nice and easy.
Yeah.
She's come back to work. She has, my experience of working with mums, there's this zone which I have named, and I don't know if there's an official title for it, but I have named it postpartum overwhelm. And it's when mums, they are not on the depression spectrum. So I wouldn't refer to them as being postpartum depressed, okay? And they wouldn't either. They're overwhelmed. They have all of a sudden back to work, 40-hour week, senior position. Yeah. They're not probably working flex, as in working from home and then working in the office. Maybe they're maybe they're a lawyer, maybe they're I don't know what they are, but they are in a serious position at work. They have a 6-month-old, they're possibly breastfeeding, so they're pumping milk. They have stress, they have anxiety. And I tend to find if one thing goes wrong and one plate drops, everything drops. The dominoes just cascade. That's the kind of feeling. So it's less depression and more, I would just call it overwhelm. That mum is in that office. So for her, it may not be maybe the underlying thing is mum guilt. I don't know if that would be the underlying part. That would be up to you. You would find that out. What is she doing at this point? She's next up to present in this same meeting, and she is running through, did I pack enough nappies, diapers for the baby at daycare? I need to pump milk. My breasts are absolutely about to burst. This meeting's going on longer than it should. My blood sugar levels drop in, blah, blah, blah. What do we do with her? What's your advice for her?
So the one word you mentioned there was overwhelm. Remember when I said before, I said, even though we're talking about all different people, like this is one area that I really specialize in. I specialize in lowering stress. So many clients I see, because I work with men and women, a lot of high-end burnout executives who suffer burnout, overwhelm. They're really on that verge of their life is like you're just feeling all these feelings of overwhelm. So we're talking about this new mum here, but the feelings are the same. The behaviours are the same. Do you know what I mean? So that's what we're working on. Again, very similar, really. I guess it depends how long we've been working together. But again, we're looking at those symptoms of overwhelm, and we're giving that new mum those techniques and tools. We'll be, as I said before, we'll be working more in depth in session, but we'd be, working with that new mum to give her those tools and the techniques that she can use. I mean, there's other tools that I use. Tapping, obviously, is what we're talking about today. So we do the in-depth work in session. So if I'm working with this new mum week after week after week, come in every session, oh, Janine, I'm really overwhelmed, I'm stressed. All these things that I'm dealing with that you just spoke about there, we break these down and we tap on all of these different areas, because all these are connected to feelings of stress.
Yeah.
Feelings of overwhelm. Does that make sense? So we work on all these areas in session, because say you had a new mum come to me on session, a consultation, a free consultation, hi, how's things, well, actually I'm feeling really overwhelmed. When we speak in that consultation, I always offer a free initial consultation. We work over Zoom, we work face to face, we work over the phone, whatever it is that's right for that person. We work on that consultation, and then if that person says, you know what, I want to start we talk about how I work, how I can help. If they kind of say, right, I'd like to come and start working with you. This is what I want help with. On session one, we'd look at that person's goal. We'd always look at the goal. And right, what's your goal? Well, my goal is to feel, I don't want to feel under pressure. I don't want to feel overwhelmed. I want to feel that I can balance. I want to feel happy. I want to enjoy being with my baby. I don't want to feel overwhelmed these 40, 50, 60-hour weeks. I want to be able to balance everything. I want to enjoy my work. I want to get back into it. I want to feel confident. I want to feel happy with my new baby. I want to kind of balance all these things. So we look at that goal and then we work towards that goal. So we work week after week after week. Does that make sense? And I kind of say to client, I'll say, look, lovely new mum, this is it's a difficult time, it's an exciting time, it's a joyous time. We want to help you work towards your goal. Yeah. And I always say to the client, if you engage with the sessions, if you turn up, you show up, and it doesn't need to be all doom and gloom, it's fun, we have some fun. If you do the work, we do the work. I don't call it work, I call it realization, I call it self-actualization, I call it empowerment. I don't call it work, because work is
empowerment's my word.
I call it empowerment. I call it girl power. I call it mindset. I call it, you go girl, you got this, you're going to do amazing. I call it empowerment. I say, if we work together, you will smash that goal, and we'll work together and we'll do the thing. And that's what we would.
You know what else? The other thing that has just come to me as you're speaking about the new mum, there's an awful lot for the new mum in what is regarded as the fourth trimester. Now, technically, the fourth trimester is the first 12 weeks, but I see some femtech companies are now trying to say that the fourth trimester is the postpartum zone. Postpartum is the first 12 months. Yeah. So just to keep it a bit more clarity to that, I would regard the fourth trimester as the first 12 weeks, just as you would get the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, or roughly around 12 to 14 weeks. Okay, so you get your 40-week pregnancy, typical length of the pregnancy. You've got that zone afterwards that, in actual fact, in a fitness level, you shouldn't be coming anywhere near a fitness instructor for at least 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the delivery and the labour that you had. Yeah, I can see a place where you could kick in and you would be helping the mum during that stage, say 6 weeks postpartum, and to start introducing ways and techniques, just like the mum would use this hypnobirthing. So she would maybe learn hypnobirthing so that she can have a natural drug-free.
Hypnobirthing is amazing. I did some recently for someone. It was fantastic. I love hypnobirthing. I don't do as much as it now, but it's very, ladies, if anyone wants, it's very powerful. Hypnobirthing is amazing. Like you say, it's the flip side of that, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm thinking that you have got a tag-on kind of service here where you are maybe doing the hypnobirthing and then saying, right, let's get back together again 4 to 6 weeks postpartum and start helping you with the stresses and overwhelm that you will discover that motherhood brings to you, especially if you're a first-time mum and you've not had this before. Yeah. Then you get to a certain period of time, and then it's, especially in the States, for any US mums who are returning back to work with almost zero maternity leave cover. I think this is fantastic. So for me, I am blown away. I'm very, very impressed. Everything I've wanted to ask you, I've asked so far. Now, the other thing I wanted to say to you is, when you are taking on clients, first and foremost, is your book open? Are you open to new clients at the moment? And remember, this will be what's a webinar that somebody might watch in 6 months' time. So in general, are you open? Are you open for business? Are you open for new clients?
Yeah. So the way it works, as I said before, I offer an initial free introductory call. So it's a consultation, either over Zoom, over the call. It's a half an hour call, but we speak exactly about what the client's needs are, what they want help with. We work out, what is their goal they're working towards. And as I said before, if we do the work together, I always guarantee that client will get them to that goal. But they've got to engage, obviously, So we have that half an hour kind of consultation. I talk through, exactly how I work and how I can help, and then we go from there. And the way I've got space for those. We've got obviously the link in the webinar chat, whatever it is.
Anywhere you're watching this video, there will be a link to all of Janine's stuff. So if you're watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it via Vivi Rocks, everything will have your website, your contact details, everything to get in touch with you, because I think this is really important, actually.
Yeah. So there's an introductory call. It's half an hour. It's all completely free, no kind of obligation. And then yeah, the way clients work, if they do book on, we work on a month by month basis. So we
Perfect.
we check people in. So it's always worth just having a conversation. Just to even even if clients decide not to work with me, sometimes, well, pretty much 9 times out of 10, whenever a prospective client comes to speak with me for half an hour, Zoom on a phone call, they always say the same thing, and I feel so much better just for actually having spoken and just having let some of these things out, and just knowing that there is support out there, knowing there is strategies and tools that I can use and I can implement, and I can actually make a change. So 9 times out of 10, just having that actual conversation, I always hear the same thing. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better already having just spoken to you. It's worth just having that initial conversation and then talking through how we might be able to help. I might be the right person for you. I'm not right for everyone. I've got a certain style that I use. I'm like a kind of egg. I'm hard on the outside. I used to have to be like that in my old job. I didn't take any shit in that job. You know what I mean? So I'm not for everyone, but I'm really kind of easy to work with. Once we get working, we have a really good connection and rapport, and we just, like I say, I'm all about empowerment and empowering people. All I wanted all those years ago was to feel empowered, and once I felt that sense of empowerment, the first day I saw Eamon and looked at his face, I was like, wow, I can just work with this guy. I know he's going to help. Just to be in that space, just to like you do with your work. We're here to just empower, to raise other ladies up and bring them up and feel good about them. It's like, why not? Why shouldn't we feel good? Like, that's what I'm all about. And once we see those changes and we work together, it's amazing for me to see. And I would like to genuinely say, I've said this before, I genuinely love what I do with a passion. It doesn't feel like work. I was in a very high stress place for many years myself. To see changes that we see in such a short space of time, it's so rewarding, and I genuinely love what I do with a passion. So come and have a chat, ladies. Honestly, just having a conversation can make a huge difference.
Well, just to wrap up on this side, Janine, that was absolutely fantastic. You've given us a real insight as to a practical way that is science-backed that would help specifically the clients that I have with Vivi Rocks. Vivi Rocks is really, it's one of the things I'm most passionate about in life, because I really feel like there is so much out there, content out there, ideas out there, practices out there, different coaches out there, and sometimes it can just get a little bit too much for Debbie walking the street and she's thinking, who's going to help me? And maybe she can't even identify what her issues are. Maybe she has no idea she's in perimenopause. Maybe she doesn't know what overwhelm looks like.
Yeah.
And I think for me, Vivi is all about the lifestyle changes, and it's 3 different pillars. One is fitness, which is the physical working out, which is critical. The second is health and nutrition, food, diet, what you're eating, critical. And the third element I call vitality. Wellness is the common term. I call it vitality because I want people to say, this is right for me. That's why it's called Vivi Rocks. Life rocks. Life is amazing. Perimenopause gets and menopause gets a real doom and gloom kind of marketing message, as does postpartum. It's meant to be hard and solid and everything's terrible. And for me, I just think, wow, I don't think we need that message anymore. Life rocks. And I think that what you're saying and how you conduct yourself, and all the times that I've come across you and met you, you just give me so much boom and oomph.
Oh, I love it. Well, what I would say on that note, if anyone's sat there kind of thinking, like wondering whether to just take that plunge, I would say, and again, probably 9 times out of 10 of my clients say, I wish I'd come to see you sooner.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I'd known about this sooner. So even if you're just thinking about it, there's no harm in just getting on a call and having a conversation, because as I said before, even just talking through something or knowing that there's support there can make a huge difference, can't it? You see it in your, like you say, Vivi Rocks, that's what it's all about. It's about just looking at things in a different way and knowing that you can feel empowered and you can make a change. That's why I call my company Change for Success, because you can change to succeed. Change to Succeed Limited, that's the limited company that I run. But and just knowing you can make that change, and that's why we're both in the same passion, aren't we? That we want to empower other people and lift up other women, and why not? We're all in this together. Let's support each other and go for it.
Well, all I can do is say thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording in a second. I just want to remind anybody that's watching this, all of the details about everything that Janine has talked about, including links to her YouTube channel, including links to any of the programs that she does. I know that she sees personal clients, she has sessions, weekly sessions, fortnightly sessions. You aren't tied to any contracts. It's ongoing month to month, which is really flexible. Mums like flexibility. Women in senior positions don't know what they're doing one month to the next often. And she also has this free initial introductory call, which honestly, just take advantage of it. Get that in the diary. I have got lots of links for Janine that I'm going to share. So wherever you're watching this video, whether it's on YouTube, if it's in the Vivi Rocks platform, if it's in the community zone, if you're watching this via Twitter Spaces, wherever you are, just look for vivirocks.com, get in touch at hello@vivirocks.com, reach out to myself, ask for any details, or look for Janine as well. I'll have all of her details listed.
I forgot to mention, because people might prefer this, I actually have an online program which is just it's self-directed. So people, I'll send the link to that. People can just kind of book, but it's once you sign up, it's unlimited access. So
Perfect.
People might think, oh, I've not got the finance to book in for session after session after session. So this is it. It's a course over it's 6 different modules, but it's all stuff around stress. You've got anxiety, stress related to anxiety, stress related to finances, stress related to health, stress related to pain, stress in relation to relationships, and all money mindset. So it's different areas, but it's an in-depth look at how you can kind of self-teach tapping. But there's videos, there's content. So it's like 6 sessions with me, if you like, but it's all online. It's all kind of there, and there's unlimited access. So I can put a link to that in as well, that my online course, so that people can always have a little look at that as well.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Vivi Rocks has free memberships and paid memberships. Feel free to get in touch. Online gym is there, and I'm always here and kicking about doing fitness at some description. I'm just going to stop recording here and tie up the session. So thanks again for joining.